And don't cut it out either.
Oh, I will. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to the Alchemist and the Oracle, a space where we engage in spiritualized conversations that deepen understanding, inspire transformation, and hopefully spark meaningful dialogue about life's most profound truths. I am Nicole Love, the Oracle, and I'm joined by my amazing co-host, Boris Ardashir Arin, also known as the
Hey,
Alchemist.
we're shaking, y'all.
So, welcome to the Alchemist and the Oracle. Today, we're getting into conversation around what are you beneath the conditioning. We're going to explore. So, the question becomes, do you know who you are versus who you have learned how to be? With that, I am going to allow the Warriors to share her perspective, and then I will share my take in how to explore this topic.
All righty, all righty. Hey, thank you for joining us here today. This topic, I think it'll piggyback off a lot, especially in this moment in time, I felt. And it's like, who are you beneath the conditioning? So it's come up because of the work that I've done. So I'm going to include myself in this here. Um, excuse me, as I go into the depth of this, especially a time. We're in a 1 year. The world is changing, the atmosphere is changing, everything is rotating at hyper speed as well. So I'm still saying that what 60 seconds is 30 seconds right now. So that's how fast we're rotating and feeling what I would call kind of unbalanced for that. So this is the time to kind of break through these things. So, most people aren't really actually knowing who we are, and it's because we've learned to become a certain way in order to survive, to belong, to be accepted. And another one is avoiding rejection. So it's like, what the question, what if the personality that we or you think that you are is actually the conditioning and survival patterns, the expectations, and the wounds and roles that we've learned to wear, you know? So, or as in one of our other episodes, like I said, who are you before you were told who to be? Um, so all right, what is conditioning? Let's just go here and break this stuff down. So when we talk about it, and I have to go back and look at even the patterns of ancestral, especially the women, like in my family, which worrying was one of those things, and concern. So conditioning is about, family expectations. It's just like the ride or die mentality. Like in our neighborhood or this, that, and the other, and some roles that mostly I'd have to say firstborn play, but that's there's some other, siblings in the middle, or depending on how many's been your family that's took over. But for the most part, that's that the expectations and the role that you're supposed to play as the firstborn, or however that may be. And sometimes it's not even said, it's unspoken stuff. The school systems, the religious call, religion, and how that's, conditions some of us. The culture, the traumas, the gender roles, that's a huge one. Now, social media too, and the performance culture and survival adaptations. So these are some of them. So you look at that, the condition is not always malicious or bad or whatever. It's an inherited survival um, that we don't realize. In other words, I realize how much that interferes, including fear, what to be. And even my ancestors, like, how come, I wasn't much like them, and they understand the essence and the nature of who I am as the queen I am, so how does this conditioning kind of disconnect or separate us? So when we look at it from I look at it from this particular perspective is the people pleasing behaviors. Huge, huge for me and trying to overcome and how that came about. The perfectionism, which I've spoken about, and the traits all seem to intercede with these, and people pleasing is one of them. Fear of judgment, huge. The emotional suppression, then had to do that. Didn't want to do that, but had to do that. And that has a lot to do with not being able to speak my voice, not being able to share my truth or anything that happened to me in such a way that I felt that I would be heard, much less believed. Big one. And then becoming who others, needed, becoming who others need us to be. And sometimes I'd have to see, and I think I challenged my girl, maybe it's true, but being at the top of being successful sometimes feels empty. And sometimes I think she felt that at some point. And then we have the burnout from performing this particular unnatural identity that we have encompassed. So I want to get into, I just tap into a little bit about what I found out. And my weekend went really fast because I wanted to dig even more deeper into what's called the human design. And I believe I already mentioned this a while ago, but finally got to get into it. And now I understood some stuff. If any of y'all on IG with me, I have to do it different and will probably have y'all follow me to a different platform. And coming to find out because of a part of my human design, that's just not a natural thing for me to go there. And I've had so much interference technology wise, which this is now giving me the wake up call of why. I'll try to get what I can over there for that, but I see that I have to make a shift. So the this intelligence in the human design is it help us reveal the natural energy patterns of ourselves. Um, and not to have these systems misused to avoid the self responsibilities that we need to have. And this is a point of embodiment and not labeling. So it really, really, really goes into deep in how for me I am and how I perform. I'm really God. And as an Taurian nature is that I process and have to think about stuff. There's stuff that I might jump on right then, and there's other things I have to process and find out. Well, is something I ought to be doing? And moving as the tortoise and the hare. Sometimes the tortoise beat the hare. So now to give you some examples to recognize whether or not you are living from a conditioning aspect. These are some examples, and I relate to some of these examples, which is constantly seeking validation, fear of disappointing others, the ability to rest. OMG, I think you chronic comparison. Oh snap! No, the ability to rest is it's something. Chronic comparison. Oh my God! Sometimes I don't even think we know that we doing that one. Always trying to prove. Always trying to prove something. Feeling disconnected from joy. Because joy, we have to choose joy and what that is. Nobody can take it, even though when we're going through something, it's like I'm smiling all the time, this and that. And somebody tried to break that from me a long, long, long time ago. And that's just a no. I know all the losses, and I had another one today. Um, can kind of want to within your egoism want to do that saying yes when you mean no. Now, Major or the young events that talks about this a lot, and what I understand really, really disturbs your is draining and really disturbs that saying yes when you really mean no. And we have to be okay with saying no, especially women, because we're givers and servers and caretakers, all that. And there's just certain things that we we have to say no to and be okay with that and understand that however that may be, they'll find or get what they need. And we're not that. Perfectionism and overthinking, which is one of the traits I said up under perfection, overthinking, which is easy to do. I think I tie into understand that that's a part of me of overthinking, and not to look at it in a bad way, just to become aware and why. And some of these traits are, I get the inheritedness of, and I also get the fact that I can, kind of change that once I'm aware and not knowing what you truly want. God doggone it, that comes up more than I don't know how many times that comes up. Oh my. So sometimes you just gotta laugh at it because I'm really serious. So what happens when this starts to break down for us? I'll try to speed up here. Is I just want you to feel me here, because I feel that this is stuff that I'm very aware of. As identity crisis, even when we're talking about, and I go with our culture, the identity crisis is I know who the freak I am, and all I do is the term. I love this one out of the movie Lean on Me. All I do is be black and die. That's all I gotta do. Be the best version of me. All I do is be black and die. That's it. Okay, because that's gonna happen.
Oh my gosh.
So loneliness. What happens when the condition break? Losing relationships. I got a most aha moment with that particular saga. It is. If you've had any love in them, that love was what it was, and sometimes it don't always pan out. Unfortunately, a lot of them have to do with conditioning. A lot of them have to do with knowing who are, and a lot of these behaviors. Oh my goodness, confusion, emotional discomfort happens when conditioning starts to break down, and grief and freedom. It is that freedom. So what it is that when you're having this awakening, it doesn't mean that you're not going to feel some dismantling in this process. Because that's what happens when you become aware of these things, and shifting is the standard, you know caterpillar to butterfly, and what they go through in the cocooning as you become and recognize and find out who the freak you really are. Okay, under and taking off what I call those layers and layers and layers and shields. So the quicker and deeper question is, who the heck are you when this performance ends, when you recognize and you shift the atmosphere in that respect? So the truth of who are, the authenticity and the soul expression. Who are you under that? Who are you in those areas? The inner knowing, your embodiment, and getting in alignment when you're out of alignment, which is still a thing that I have sitting over here from 2021. The alignment, still working, and you're in alignment. And then the emotional honesty, it's not as, a perfected enlightenment, but returning to self, which is kind of what Alan was talking about in all her stuff with spiritual hygiene, good hygiene, bad hygiene. It is that. And so, oh, hey, so when we look at that, this journey is not becoming someone new. It's just remembering who we are before the fear, before we got into survival mode, before the conditioning convinced us to abandon the truth of who we are. Regardless of who you love, and that is like, oh, the world says this. I'm like, what if it was the other way around? And so I'll just go someplace because it's in my chair in my room and ain't going nowhere. For instance, who said that things would be different of a world who wants to say who you're supposed to love? What if it was the other way around, and being heterosexual was taboo and being gay was like the right thing to be or do, or whatever the case may be? Just an example I put out there. I've had that conversation with somebody else, so I just thought I brought it up to give some food for thought perspective. Um, so and then I have some questions to just kind of pose, and then I'm a girl here, the Oracle. We'll take it from that because I'm always about that transformation, but the awareness comes first before even that can happen. So for you, when we're looking at identity and authenticity, who would you be if nobody expected anything from you? Good question. Even for me still, who am I as I continue to transform and become? Because I'm already her. So now I just need to honor her, you know, you know,
Mm-hmm.
just period. Unapologetically so. Okay. And then it's like, what parts of us have we abandoned in order to be accepted? Mm. Okay. And are the choices coming that we choose coming from the truth or they still come from the Bible? That's kind of what you want to look at. And so we look at, what beliefs. So this is the question that I kind of remember when we're doing, I think, healing ancestral patterns. It's like, what beliefs about you were inherited instead of consciously chosen? It's like how I walk, how you work, how you speak, how you do. I know, the honor all aspects. I mean, now I don't need to cut off the energy of feminine masculine energy that can be from the one. That's why the yin and the yang and how they fit and how they're supposed to come and to flow together as one you. And honoring that, even in the men, that feminine energy is your heart self, mostly how you treat yourself. And if you have a partner, wherever they might be, so want to be more of the heart side, that and how you treat your women for most of you men out there. And even if you're dating other men, someone has more of that energy that doesn't determine you any less of the man that you are in this world, a woman either. So, and who taught you what success was supposed to look like? I think we need to determine what that looks like for our own instead of comparing it even with anybody else. That's a huge one. And some other emotional spiritual reflections would be, when do you feel most disconnected from yourself? And you have to get to know more aware of what that might be, or what parts of you feel heavy or rebuilt from the conditioning instead of alignment, which is all about flow. um and what would authenticity free you from? Just being your true and most dynamic self in that. And sometimes in this here, I'm gonna go back to kind of journaling some of these, and maybe taking these questions, go back to this replay or whatnot, and looking at that. And then some of it is getting to understand your human design and the natural authenticity of you. Is, have you been using systems to understand yourself, or have you been avoiding just to trust yourself? And what happens when you stop trying to become and just start remembering who you are? And one last one here, and then I'll just throw out something here. Have you ever realized this is what I highlight when I wrote down myself. Have you ever realized that you don't actually know who you are outside of what people needed you to be? Hmm. How much of your personality is truly you, and how much of it has been built for survival over time? You know? So, one of the things I'd like to suggest or offer to you and this is a hard one because women, I know for sure, we judge ourselves really harshly. And sometimes when I say, and I'm out now because I stopped saying I'm sorry about certain stuff I don't need to be sorry about. We need to stop saying I'm sorry so doggone much for stuff that just is and whatever. So start observing yourself without judgment. So awareness is my thing. It's about the key. You know, you can't change what you have not noticed. Awareness is the beginning of returning to self. This is. So, encourage you to be aware of where you shrink, of where you are performing, where you are seeking approval other than from yourself, depending on the nature of who you really seeking approval from, and being aware of where you feel drained and what makes you feel most alive. So understanding your natural energy, understanding how you process things, and noticing what generally feels aligned. Not to label yourself, but just to reconnect. And the biggest thing that you shared, and I did it in understanding more. I continue to learn more about what I thought I understand now when it comes to grounding in that is to because it's not about information, it's about integration. So to have, condition size through constant distraction. So you want to, look at being somewhere silent. The journaling comes. We talk about nature all the time. Um, Nick, and then going into solitude. Now I told somebody, and I was just talking about one of my other elders was talking about that how people said they gotta have the TV on all the time in the house. It's like I don't have nothing going on in my room and anywhere. And I remember my room and even the room I had today, I grew up in. I was silent and I felt that I was alone, but I really just needed that to woosah from the outside. But I didn't know that then. But there was a part of my beingness that knew that. Unplugging from social media. Okay. Drum roll. And sitting with discomfort, which ain't the easiest for me. I said I was going to be. This is a vulnerable moment. So sitting with discomfort instead of escaping it.
Repeat that again for those in the back.
Sitting with discomfort instead of escaping it, even with your own self. This is the word that we just have to understand that is sitting with the discomfort. And I think that's the whole thing that Yala Major is on by, and it's not, but we are worth it to become whole, to become true to self, to live in the walk, and in the walk tall, head held high, and to know the queening or the kinging. I call it queening because I'm understanding and I'm accepting both of my energies, but the king and queening of who you are. Um, and so, we just have to practice that radical self honesty. We just have to admitting when something no longer aligns with us. And I just had messages where I got to continue. It's talking about detachment. I have to detach. I just have to, admitting resentment, exhaustion when you are admitting about the fear. That was something that felt taboo to tell somebody that I fear something or that you fear something. And then the thing of it is admitting that we've outgrown certain identities or even certain places or certain statuses is just not serving us anymore. So to stop, that performing, awakening is not always graceful, which I was talking about earlier before, which is sitting in the comfort as the cocooning from a caterpillar to a butterfly. And there's some other people. There's another species that go through that. They just use the butterfly we just use the butterfly as the main going to. So, you know, so I'm gonna leave with this here. What came naturally before you started trying to earn love, approval, safety, or belonging? And we have to go back to natural words. Sometimes we have to go back to the kid before the conditioning really got in there. We might have to go back way, way younger, maybe even under 5. Because there's certain things that I know with kids that are natural ability of that we like don't do that and stop and this and that because and then kids run around, they have the energy. We have to respect them. That's why being outside is the place to be and not in the house. So, we stop allowing that natural flow instead of recognizing and looking at, the things that we are. So, yeah, I don't know if there's anything else I outlined, but Maybe the real journey is not about becoming, like I said, not about becoming someone new. Maybe it's just having the courage, the huge courage, and get back to Maya Angelou, and the courage, which is all about courage, to remove everything that taught you to abandon yourself. I'll say that again. Maybe this journey isn't about becoming someone new, because people say, I lost myself from my life. I say, I ain't never been lost. I just need to honor who I was beneath all this bullcrap, and knocking off these layers and the shells and all that stuff for the protection. And maybe it's just about us having the courage to remove everything that has taught us to abandon our authentic and true selves. And allow yourself to be who the freak you really are. Do the work. As Major say. Do the work. You're worth it. And have fun in the process while you're doing it. Oh yeah, I forgot about add music to your thing. Do music too. Music is my huge go-to. Dancing. It's another one. Free yourself. Shake your tail feather.
Wow. Sorry.
So your auric perspective. Yeah. On who you are beneath the conditioning. Yeah. So I'm done. I didn't propose my alchemic perspective.
That means you start talking, Nicole. Is that what that means?
Yeah, that means when you're ready. I ain't forcing nothing.
I was waiting for you.
I'm good, baby. We done.
Okay.
Peace out for this moment.
All right. Let's see here. So you made some really good points, and I think you provided you provided a lot of options to get a sense of awareness. So if you made it this far, listening through the first time, you may want to go back and dig into those questions of reflections that the Warriors Ardashir Arben has provided. So for my perspective, my take is I always like to look at words and connect the energy, kind of see what the patterns are. Mm-hmm. And so when I look at like the question, like, who are you beneath the conditioning? My mind goes to, okay, what does that even mean? Right. So conditioning, I think people have an idea of what conditioning is. And so I looked it up. And what's interesting is when you look up conditioning, the first thing that comes up is like defining it, approaches it from a physical fitness standpoint. And I was like, ooh, that's really interesting. But I think that's also important to kind of note. So put a pin in that. We're going to put that like kind of like off to the side here. We may come back to it if my mind brings it back around.
Right.
So when we think of conditioning, it approaches it from this modification of behavior through associations between like stimuli and responses, right? So when we think of like stimuli and responses in terms of conditioning around what we're talking about specifically, it impacts like your nervous system. It impacts your body, how your body responds to the stimuli, the experiences. And from that, there's a response that comes. So you have the stimuli, you have the experience, whatever that experience may be, like the conditioning, right? Let's say there's conditioning around women should only wear dresses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's this conditioning that's pushed around women should wear dresses. You may have an experience of a stimuli in that way. I'll share a story briefly, an example rather. I remember my grandmother used to love to put me in dresses, but then when she would put me in dresses, she would always be like, don't do this, don't do that. And I remember thinking, then why did you put me in a dress? Like it goes against everything that I wanted
Oh
to
my
do and
God, I'm glad you
experience
went
in my
there.
life. And so that is the stimuli that I experience from the conditioning. And so the response that comes from a stimuli, it always goes through your brain, goes through this process, right? So you have the stimuli, you have the experience, you have that conditional experience, usually at childhood. And from that, your brain creates like it tries to make meaning of like, wait, what does the stimuli mean? What like, and then
Mm-hmm.
from that there becomes like this seeking of validation of if this is a true statement. And from that there's a belief that's formed, whether you think, oh, dresses are wonderful and women should be wearing, girls and women should be wearing dresses, versus the belief of this is bullshit, fuck dresses. So based on that, right, the pattern there creates a belief. From that belief, there becomes a program, and that is the response that comes. So the conditioning that we experience, it always modifies our behavior through the stimuli. From the stimuli being the experience, it activates the brain. From the brain activation, there's a belief. From the belief, there's a patterning. From the patterning, it plays out in your life. That is the response that comes. So going further down the rabbit hole here around conditioning, kind of going deeper, conditioning can also be defined as a form of learning that involves the formation, the strengthening, or weakening of an association between a stimulus and a response. So going back to the story of the dress, right? I have this stimulus, this response around my grandmother telling me girls should be wearing dresses, and then me having the experience of the expectations of her and from her around girls wearing dresses. Me, like, I can't climb trees. I have to sit still. I can't do nothing. She tells me to go play, but then it's like, don't play that way. And I'm just like, then what is the point of a dress? And so this creates like that belief around that dresses. And so for a really long time, I hated dresses. I told myself, hey, I hate dresses. They're uncomfortable. They feel restrictive. They feel exposing, because if I wear a dress, that means someone's going to be trying to look up my dress. And so there's all these things that kind of spiraled from this one thing of a conditioning around girls. As a girl, you should be wearing a dress. And there's this learning that comes from every single stimuli, every single experience that we have that tells us who to be and how to be in the world and society, that forms either a strengthening, right? I strengthen my resolve in pushing against the narrative of like, wearing a dress, I need to do these things. But also what happened on the other side of is it weakened my feeling safe and comfortable in dresses.
Yeah.
And it's because I made this association between, because of that stimuli, and there was a response from that. So I had that experience around dresses. And it wasn't until I got into, oh my goodness, probably like my late 30s, that I was like, oh, I kind of like wearing a dress. I like how it feels when I wear a dress. I like how I look reflected back in a dress. You know, I like the attention from the person that I want the attention from. Let's preface that. I like how he responds to me when I'm wearing dresses. And it caused me to really look at, like, reevaluate this conditioning that I had, you know, that had strengthened my resolve and kind of weakened my feeling safe in the dress, right? In such a way that I realized like that's not fully the truth of how I really feel about dresses. And I pulled a couple of cards kind of leaning into like how can we go further down the rabbit hole of like who are you beneath the conditioning. And one of the cards that came up, it kind of addresses like have you a never before experienced part of your life. The thing about conditioning, because it either strengthens or weakens, it can create this program where you avoid certain things because you have told yourself through the conditioning of whatever it may be. Like we're gonna go back to the dress. Like I don't wear dresses, which means I never shop for dresses. I didn't have dresses in my closet. I just never really explored it, and so bringing it back to kind of like building upon what the warriors just shared. Like how can you learn who you were before the world told you who to be? Is that it's really important to give yourself grace when you're recognizing this conditioning, and also recognizing, I don't remember exactly what you said, but you were talking about how you outgrow things, right? Sometimes you come back around to like, oh, when I was 15, I didn't really like this, but now as a 25-year-old, I kind of like this. And then maybe you get in your 30s, like, yeah, I don't really like it anymore. And then you get into like your 50s, you're like, I kind of like it this specific way. And so it's allowing yourself to kind of ebb and flow and evolve with things that I think it's more of like realizing that sometimes things are just much more supportive. They're much more aligned, and allowing yourself to kind of ebb and flow through things versus like picking yourself apart of like, why can't I land in and be consistent in things? And then also people die on heels, right? That no longer bring them any level of joy or excitement or passion for life, but they're like, nope. And it goes back to conditioning. Nope.
Yes.
I must like go back to like the SOS versus the Brillo pads, right?
Yes.
I'm dying on this heel that this brand is superior, and you've never tried it because maybe both of them are the same, and there's actually an entirely other new brand that you haven't even tried that's much more powerful and effective. So conditioning, being aware of that, I think is important to remind yourself that, you know, you never have experienced that part of your life because of conditioning. And it's a lot of it is done purposefully because I don't want you to experience that part of your life. I don't want you to feel comfortable ebbing and flowing like, yeah, I kind of like kale now, but yeah, I'm kind of over kale. Let's go explore spinach versus, you know, the narrative like you must eat spinach. You must eat kale every day. It must be this percentage. It must be in the morning before 10 a.m. It's so restrictive, right? And sometimes, a lot of times, I think you can probably agree, is that sometimes you need a break from stuff, or it's just not what you need in the moment, and it's all okay. And I think part of conditioning that I see is so problematic is that we feel that we have to be the same at every single point in life. And so many people are fighting to maintain that versus allowing themselves to just be in this, the ebb and flow of life and the cycles that come naturally. And one of the things too,
that's for sure,
that conditioning kind of activates too, like the fear, because I think a lot of people have fear around experiencing new things in life too. You know, it's like it can be really scary to leave what you've worked so hard to create and to maintain. And, you know, I'm one that likes to talk about the truth of it. Like, it can be really hard to like, you start exploring, you start to be aware of like, oh my gosh, like, I really thought that dresses were evil. And I have like created an entire soapbox, or like maybe your entire personality, quote unquote, identity is like, I don't wear dresses, like they're evil. And then you kind of put one on and you're like, oh my gosh, I must hide this part of who I am.
Yeah.
Why? Who told you that you can't
Yeah.
change your mind? And we work so hard to maintain the conditions that are beneath the conditioning. And so the question that I find can ensure that you are in a place of discernment and getting greater insight and clarity is really asking, like, where does your heart, or where is your heart guiding you? Because if you have these moments of like, you put the dress on, you're like, ooh, I look good in this. Or like, ooh, I like the fact that my lady parts can breathe, you know, or like my solar plexus and my root chakra feel so open and grounded like never before, right? And just like, where is your heart guiding you? Like, if it just, and the guiding part is, it can be very subtle where you're just like, something that you used to enjoy doing has maybe become more of a chore, but you do it because it's habitual. It could be as simple, it can be as simple as that. And so the next question I have is also too, is, are you feeling stuck with emotions, thoughts, or your energy flow? It can show up as that too. Like your heart can speak in that way of like, oh, I just feel so heavy, like sense of heaviness. And emotions or just thoughts. Like, well, maybe you're just kind of thinking over things, right? So I want to circle back as I finish up my position here. Is the question again is like, who are you beneath the conditioning? And then I caught, what does beneath mean? Right? So beneath is, it means in a lower position covered by something. It also means unworthy of a person's status or dignity. You guys see where I'm going? And when we look deeper at, okay, what does dignity mean? Dignity, it means that there is this inherent value by being with and in your humanness. So beneath, this is lower positioning covered by something, right? That something could be people, places, and things. It can be culture. It can be your grandmother having all the greatest intentions. And I know why my grandmother told me the things that she did. She just didn't tell me as a child because she didn't want to put that fear in me on that level. And it was because she knew there was creepy people looking and waiting for a little girl to like climb up a tree and be able to look up her dress. Like she knew those things, but she didn't tell me that because she also didn't want me to carry the burden of that. She knew that I would catch up and learn that reality. And she was right. Sadly, I learned it a lot sooner than later in life. I'm sure she probably had hoped. But beneath, who are you beneath? And beneath is this approaching it from lowering your position of you being with your humanness. And then I was like, okay, let's go back, circle back around to conditioning. And I was looking, I was like, con and conditioning. I was like, ooh, con and conditioning, right? So I separated them. And when you think of con, most people like, ooh, they kind of have a sense of what that means. Con, deceptively to gain another's confidence. It's a confidence game. A con is a confidence game. And it is to make someone believe something. That's what con means. And then conditioning means dominion, rule, and power. So there's this lowering position that is unworthy of your status and your dignity that is deceptively attempting to gain your confidence to make you believe something that goes against your power, your rule, and your dominion over yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who are you beneath
Those parts.
conditioning? So seeing how the beneath it all, the conditionings, what's beneath that conditioning? What's beneath it? What's the con that's going against your confidence? Why is this even a thing? Why do we have conditionings? Why are there conditions? Because when we truly are in our light, when we truly are aligned with the highest God, right? There's no conditions in love. So everything else that goes to labeling, to like quantifying, qualifying, identifying, it goes against the allowing the dominion and the power, the sovereign being that we each of us is and are. And you know, I don't go that deep on here. I go deeper on the other one solo over there, where I'm like talking really like, let's just say, what's the word? Not controversial, but what's the word people like to call it when it's kind of true but kind of cloaked in like things that don't sound real? You know what I'm talking about.
I do. What is the word?
Oh my gosh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Conspiracy.
Oh, yeah,
Conspiracy
I
theory.
like
Even
controversy.
that, conspire, right?
Yeah,
Like, don't get me
it's all
started.
about control. I
Yeah, it's
mean,
all about
you
going
share.
against your the confidence that you should have within yourself, because you are a being, right? We're beings here on earth.
Yeah, I mean, if y'all been with us in our podcast, I don't really have to really identify anything origin about myself. But the thing that you mentioned when you talk about grandmother, my grandmother was a sharp some. My mom's mom, because I was around her more than I was my dad's mom because of her out of townness. But I learned a lot from the time I was with her too. But being around my grandmother and what my mom's mom had to do, knowing at the age that she had my mom and this and that. And I don't know if I've ever talked about the book on the head thingy.
Yeah.
You know, I tried to oblige her so much, but I didn't, that did not work. And she eventually left it alone. And I was never, ever, ever chastised or anything like that. Thank God. I just loved her and her honoring me eventually for who I was and what I shared with her, I believed at the time. And she went out with me, all these different things. The dress thing, well, hadn't been in one for like, 22 years at one point. And it wasn't, my work didn't really require it. And somewhere to go and all that type of stuff. But the natural and that you felt about it is that in the uncomfortableness that my soul felt about it, knowing what you just shared that she wasn't sharing, that I knew, and feeling naked even with clothes on was an issue. Now this is very vulnerable shit right here. She was expression.
Yeah.
So and so about almost 10 years ago, and I have a certain way that I like to present. I like to look in my clothes, and I still look fucking good, okay? Excuse that expression. But how I like to look, how I present in certain clothes is on me. So after a point, I had pulled something like 015, that at this one store, put it on the side. And this one day that I went to the spiritual facility that I was going to at the time, in the state that I was in, it told me, Spirit said, put that on. Put that on, the skirt I had, the top I had, put that on, the shoes on, and go. And I remember when I had got out the car to walk into the facility, I couldn't feel my feet. That was not a bad thing. It was like I was walking on air. I was just feeling some kind of way. and it walked, and I remember saying, Lord, I can't feel my feet. And I'm like, this is good, you know. And I'm walking in there, had never walked in there with anything of a skirt or a dress on, and phenomenal, got all kind of pictures. So it was I have bags, I call them, and they work. I got some other ones that I have to condition, they leather and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. I was like,
Yeah.
wait, what are we talking about? Okay, I gotcha.
Bags, my accessory.
I didn't know that's what you were talking about. It just
Okay, my bad. I can't assume people
came
knows
out of
all
left field there.
in my head, my accessories. So I get that, and how I'm supposed to be, and that I have to do that, you know. So I come to a point where I'm comfortable um walking or doing that. It's not my go-to. I love a certain heel and this and that, and I have a certain expression of dress. But I felt you, and I feel that, and it's what they knew, and how we, you know, had to show up in the world. No heat of judgment, but definitely on my terms. Definitely on my terms, and owning every aspect of who. Um,
Yeah.
I had this conversation last night. This was very interesting, you know. Um, or had this conversation whenever it was, but and it had to do with men and earrings. So I'm with a seasoned elder, right? Who, and I understand. So I listen, I open, I'm like, well, you know, this thing about the earrings and wearing this, and I'm like, yeah, someone got in here, and depending on the stars, you know, the bling, and you know, I'm making this with the one little earring in the ear or something like that. But you have a certain criteria of people or women who older, and there's some men of a certain generation who ain't gonna put an earring in their ear. They ain't gonna even put a stud in their ear. Okay, so because of the conditioning,
Yeah, that's deeply conditioned. The irony of that is most of the black men,
yep,
it
we talking
goes
about black
against the
men.
culture that they come
Yeah.
from, but they're not aware of the culture because of the conditioning of being here in
Yes,
the United States of America to remove us
yes,
connecting to that culture.
yep, and so
Conditioning is
she,
so funny when you kind of look at some of the conditioning and how it exists. It's comical.
yeah, she said she would not deal with a man who wore an earring in her ear, and the one who
Okay, well, that's
unfortunately
their
just passed.
preference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so he definitely wouldn't ever, he just passed, would never ever put an earring in his ear. You know, he was a black elder too. So it's like, you know, yeah. And then you have the other generations that's why I said they want to put an earring in their ear when it was just a woman's thing. And so, and for some women who don't wear, some people who can't take pain or want to get an ear pierced, you'll find some women that don't have no earrings in, or you might find that might have just got one when they was 50, you know, or something like
Yeah,
that, you
yeah.
know, just saying. So, and then I believe that there's some people who didn't get the pierced used to wear the clip-ons, but they have to be real tight, especially if you got some nice little gold ones with some diamonds. They got to hold on so they don't come off,
But
you
the
know, per se. And
clip-ons,
even these come off too
but the
sometimes.
clip-ons can
Yeah.
cause like deform, like it messes with your
It's,
skin, your earlobe. Because I knew
yeah, well, it's
someone that
pressing.
used to wear them all the time when I was in college, and she had to stop wearing them because the reason she didn't get her ears pierced is she keloid really easily. And
Mm-hmm.
she started wearing the clip-ons and she started to keloid from those. So it was just like,
Yeah, I kilo from or the itching start, but I never allowed myself. I used to see people get that, but I'm like, you just have to say the money to get the goal or whatever, because I refuse to deal
yeah.
with
Well,
the itching
nowadays
just
they
for
have alternatives
step.
that are cheaper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they do. Yeah,
In my opinion, probably a little bit more superior, especially when you first get a piercing.
yeah, it was the
Like
metals that we're
gold.
allergic to.
Yeah.
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 But with that being said, yeah, so I had that conversation. Just interesting that tied right into to this
Yeah.
here, you know, for even for the men and those who've decided to wear earrings, and some of them are wearing two. Most of them, if they're wearing two, they're normally having studs. If they wear a dangling one, they're only wearing one.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So
But anyway,
conditioning.
yeah,
You have to
that's
wrap anything you want to to say as we close out?
I just wanted to throw that in there. It just was a pickup off of what you had said, and just to give people some as some food for thought, food for your aha moments, or some to bring you some aha moments, and to look into it, and to, and the world needs us at our most authentic, aligned selves in
Yes,
this moment.
ma'am. I think my takeaway, it piggies back on what you said earlier about getting to a level of awareness with self, right? And I think it's really helpful to see how we live in a world that is conning us. There's a lot of con games that are being played out, because it goes back, like when we think of like what I said about con is it's going against it's this deception to gain your confidence. They're trying to take your confidence. So start to look at some of these conditionings of the things that you may even enjoy, right? Start there, because even that will kind of start to blow your mind. But I think if it brings you joy and happiness, that's what matters.
Yes.
That's what really matters. So start looking at the things that I say, start with the things that don't make you happy, that your heart is, you're kind of like, because it's the world is requiring of us more than ever to be who we are. And part of the challenge of what is going on right now and is building up is that people have been so conned in feeling they have the capacity to be themselves, to be with themselves. And that is the only path forward here. Is if we need more people to be who they are, to recognize the con in order for the world to calm down. So
and we need forward. And we need to honor each other for who we are, not who we think we ought to be or who somebody else ought to be,
that's a requirement.
Since we're all sharing space,
that is a
requirement here in this world.
That is a requirement. Yes.
Yeah. So,
all right. Well, thank you for being in conversation with me, Waris Arsharan. I appreciate you. Deep bow.
Ditto. Deep bow.
Thank you for those who have made it to the end of this episode, and let us know how you felt this one. Like, talk back to us. We like when people talk back, and we really like the communication part of it. Yes. How do you feel you've been conned? How do you feel what's the con game that you recognize going on in the world? Comment down below, or anything else that you want to. And we hope to see you in the next episode.
Yes.
Thanks for watching.
Much love, y'all. Peace.
Bye.